40-plus cities face an army of mainly leftist crybaby millennials that have descended on America. Rather than respect the First Amendment that states Congress shall make no law respecting the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, that cherished freedom doesn't include setting up piles of bricks for the protesters to hurl at will, as we saw in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, I know what building this is right here. I ain't even gonna say what name it is.
Hey, where do them bricks go to? Where do them bricks go to? Where do them bricks
We gotta do better.
Ain't no damn construction.
Gotta do better.
Ain't no damn construction around here.
I see.
Ain't no.
This mob of the unemployed, due to the pandemic, are destroying the very hand that feeds them as they torch our stagnating economy, reducing small business owners' lives into ashes, just as we were on the precipice of beginning to climb out of this economic hole. Egged on and coordinated by social media forces deeply rooted in the George Soros leftist machine, looters and rioters disguised as protesters utilized the George Floyd murder to destroy more lives and ultimately themselves, as facial recognition software is going to be their worst nightmare, if it wasn't everyone else's already.
In many places, it appears the violence is planned, organized, and driven by anarchic and left extremist groups, far left extremist groups, using Antifa-like tactics, many of whom travel from outside the state to promote the violence. In that regard, it is a federal crime to cross state lines, to use interstate facilities to incite or participate in violent rioting, and we will enforce those laws.
They have completely lost their fear of God. These kids are in front of burning buildings. These kids are looting, taking selfies. That is what just pierces me, is that you're watching these kids go out here and create this violence, taking selfies and going on Instagram Live. And this has become kind of a cultural fad now.
I think of the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Party, the FALN, the Weather Underground. These were domestic terror groups back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They didn't have the communications networks that these kids have today. They didn't have the ability to move the way they do today. They didn't have cell phones and social media. So it's easy for these groups today to get a message out and be somewhere within an hour.
In Austin, Texas, a streamer made it obvious that they weren't from Texas, and neither were the majority of protesters.
Austin City Hall. Oh, it's only half a mile.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How long you been there, really?
Oh, so we're good. Oh, that's an InfoWars truck.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Look. It says InfoWars on the front of it.
When the roughly 1,000 finally arrived at the Texas state capitol, they panicked and concluded that they were going to be locked in the Capitol grounds.
Uh-oh, they're planning. They're planning. That's what they like to let us do. They like to let us settle, and then they plan to shove us out.
Thinking, but they think they're going to trap us in here.
Oh, and
5,000 people
with a 4-foot gate
for being.
Well, they'll start arresting people one by one, maybe.
Makes no sense. They're afraid they're going to trap us in here, I guess.
Yeah, because we're surrounded by gates, and they could just close everything off, and then we can't go anywhere.
Real Texans know that you can't be locked down on the Capitol grounds.